Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Dodds. I work for the City of Philadelphia's Division of Housing and Community Development. Specifically, I'm in the Policy and Programs unit there, and we are charged with administering the Choice Neighborhoods Grant, among many other things. And then I'll just kick it over to the rest of the panelists so they can introduce themselves one by one. Maya, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Maya Curtis. I am one of the project managers working on this great project.
Hi, I'm Kathy Harris. I'm Director of Community Murals for Mural Arts Philadelphia and supporting Maya in managing this amazing, huge project. Very complicated, but it's been a lot of fun and very gratifying. So look forward to talking about it more with everybody.
Priscilla?
Hi, hi everybody. My name is Priscilla. I have worked on the Susquehanna Viaduct project as a muralist with my fellow muralist, Anthony Tercazio.
And Tiffany?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany. I am a community resident, and me and my family participated in the stages for selecting the artists, the meet and greets, and even up to the panel review.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So the way we like to move forward here is that I'll give a brief background on the grant itself, kind of what brought us all here today. I'll give an overview of the project, and then I'll kick it over to Maya, who will run through a whole bunch of slides. Fortunately, we're far enough along on the project that you'll be able to see some photos of where things stand today. Some of the murals that have gone up are pretty much complete, so we're excited about that. And then we're going to have a Q&A among the panelists, and then we'll invite you all to ask us questions as well. So, yep, perfect. Thanks, Maya. So the reason we're all here today is because of a Choice Neighborhoods implementation grant. These are grants awarded by HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They award a couple different types of grants. They award planning grants. The big ones, so to speak, are the implementation grants, and those are $30 million grants. And in the case of Philadelphia, it's leveraged by approximately $100+ million of other services. Just to give you an idea, there are about 5 grantees a year across the country, and some of you may be more familiar with this term because recently Philadelphia was also awarded a second grant in the Sharswood-Blumberg neighborhood. Today, we're here to specifically talk about the North Central Choice neighborhood. And then to provide some background on the grant, I'll show you a map of the neighborhood later, but it really extends from about 16th Street on the west, Germantown Avenue on the east, York to the north, and Cecil B. Moore on the south. I did mention it's a $30 million grant. The focus is really on people, housing, and neighborhood, as HUD calls it. So for the housing portion of the grant, they really look towards distressed public housing sites. In this case, it's the Norris Homes community, which was barrack-style, low-rise, brick facade housing just east of Temple's campus. That has all recently come down, and new housing is going up in its place. I want to stress that every resident who was a member of that former housing site has what's called the right to return, which means that they are able to move into brand new, in many cases, very modern, affordable housing with plenty of amenities. And that's open to everyone. And if they're not sure when they want to move back, they have quite a lengthy time to let PHA know that they want to come back to those residents. And they're built, many of them are built on site in the same exact neighborhood that they were living before. So that's the housing portion of it, I mentioned a little bit about the people. The people is really a focus of the residents of Norris Homes. So that includes everything from case management services to specific projects and programs, to making sure that job training is available, to making sure that health care services are available, child care services are available, things of that nature. The neighborhood component, which is largely what we're going to talk about today, involves critical community improvements. And for this particular grant, we are implementing 3, one of which are the murals along the viaduct, which we'll talk about in great detail. But really, the overall goal is to address distressed public housing through a comprehensive approach to neighborhood transformation. Like I mentioned, the city, in particular, DHCD is the lead partner on the grant, and the Housing Authority, PHA, is the co-lead. And everybody who makes this happen include residents first and foremost. There are other stakeholders in the community, including like businesses that are operating there, as well as different neighborhood organizations, and they certainly play a key role in this process as well. So one of the goals in our transformation plan that we submitted to HUD in our application was for higher quality mixed housing, and that's something, of course, they want to see as well. We also, education is a main focus of the grant, so we're looking to, across the board from pre-K all the way up until high school. We track certain metrics around that. We also, through the grant, support an after-school program run directly out of Norris Homes, and that doubles as a summer camp as well in the summertime. It includes things like the support includes case management, like I mentioned earlier, job training, home ownership counseling, etc. And at the same time, what sets this apart from other housing-related grants is a real focus on the surrounding neighborhood as well. So while HUD wants us to address many different factors across the neighborhood, they're really kind of focused on that area adjacent to the target housing site. So that's kind of where this project comes into play, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But the 3 critical community improvements that we proposed to HUD are underpass improvements, which include the murals that we're going to talk about, as well as additional lighting that has gone up underneath those underpasses. Philadelphia Community Kitchen, which is a culinary arts training site, was just completed maybe this past month. And that will train both local residents, people throughout the city, as well as those returning from incarceration. So we're very excited about that. And also there are going to be improvements are underway, I should say, at 8th and Diamond Rec Center. That includes a 1,000 square foot building addition and brand new playground equipment, spray ground equipment, resurfaced basketball courts, etc. So here's a map of the area. I mentioned where we're located a little bit earlier. Specifically, you can see the intersections where the viaduct kind of cuts through the center of the neighborhood. It really has created a divide over the years, and for several reasons. You have Temple University kind of looming to the west. You have Norris Homes, which is that area. I'm not sure if you can see it now. You might be able to see it better in a zoomed in version we'll show later. Just to the west of the circles. It's outlined in the red dotted lines. That's the target housing site, kind of wedged in between Temple University and the viaduct. And then to the east of the viaduct, you'll also see another area outlined in red dashes. That is part of some of the new construction that I was talking about. So scattered site new construction is happening on the east of the side of the viaduct, and replacement housing, which is really being built on the footprint of the old Norris Homes on the west side of the viaduct. And you can see, I mentioned before that residents have the right to return. Well, some of those residents that were once living west of the viaduct are going to be returning to houses east of the viaduct. That rail line that splits through the neighborhood is both a real and kind of psychological barrier. So for somebody who used to live on the west side, they may not have passed under under that rail line very often. And part of the goal of this project is to get them to be more comfortable and to improve connections, not only for former residents, but for other neighborhood residents that maybe they haven't gone the other way, right? Coming from the east side of the viaduct to the west side of the viaduct. Then you'll also, I mentioned the 3 other critical community improvements. You can see them here. You also see them on the other map, but it's the Philip Abundance site is in orange, just north of the, yep, thanks, Maya. And the 8th and Diamond Playground is outlined, it's the green, yep, perfect. So you can see there's kind of like a holistic approach to investing in a lot of areas in and around that target housing site. The next slide. So as I mentioned before, the Division of Housing and Community Development is one of the lead partners. For this particular project, we're seeking to create public artwork in the areas around the SEPTA regional rail line. So those specific intersections are North Street, Diamond Street, and Susquehanna Avenue. We're also, I should mention that we're also in the process of doing some planning for another mural that's separate from this project, but somewhat related at 8th and Berks. So that is at the main entrance to the Temple Regional Rail Station. And we can talk a little bit more about that if there are questions regarding that. But really the focus of this particular presentation is to talk about the improvements happening under the viaduct as part of a way to improve connections, improve safety, decrease crime. That's by getting more lights at those intersections, and also eliminate trash and dumping that we've seen in the past. So I mentioned the 3 sites, yep. And I also ran through that second bullet there, which is really feedback that we got from the community. People wanted to see increased lighting. And then I touched on it a little bit. Trash is a concern. Safety was a concern. You can imagine at night with little to no lighting under those overpasses, a lot of cars were getting broken into, and that was probably like the least dangerous thing happening there. So next slide. So here's a zoomed in version of the larger map you saw. Again, the target housing site is on the left, and the 3 critical community improvements. You have the viaduct improvements, you have Philip Abundance to the north, and the 8th and Diamond Playground to the east. We couldn't do this alone, so I of course need to mention our partners involved here. This is just one particular project, the grant as a whole. You can multiply this list by 10. There's many different organizations were involved. But for this particular project, it was DHCD from the city side, Streets Department, and Otis were responsible for the lighting aspects of this. Mural Arts, of course, for facilitating the installation of the murals and the public art. APM, Association of Puerto Ricanos in Marcha, did a lot of assisted with a lot of the community engagement. They employ community connectors that actually do door-to-door outreach in the neighborhood. Among other things. And SEPTA, of course, we were in close contact with them, making sure that they were okay with the designs, making sure that we had permission to work on their property, essentially. So one thing before I go any further is I really do need to mention the lighting portion of this project. It's not the most glamorous, but we have increased the lighting by like tenfold. Some intersections actually had no lighting at all. And now you'll see in some of the photos that Maya will show you that the frequency is incredible. They stay on 24/7. They're all LED. Some of them actually do a tremendous job of highlighting the artwork that you'll see, as well as making these much, much safer, especially at nighttime. Just some more background on the project. It's two beautiful, beautify the area, of course, inspire residents, and express a sense of community pride. So you'll see from our community engagement activities kind of how we were able to hopefully achieve some of those goals. Like I mentioned before, improve neighborhood connectivity, encouraging pedestrian access both from the east and from the west side of the viaduct. We wanted to engage children, and we wanted to engage people of all ages. So you'll see from one of the projects that kids were involved in a project. For 8th and Diamond particular, there were a lot of seniors involved in the engagement process. And this was mainly in an effort to address the concerns that I mentioned earlier around safety, trash, lack of lighting, connectivity, etc. And at least one of the sites should reflect an aspect of community history. I think that that's really done in all 3 sites, but the goal going in was to make sure that we were able to accomplish that in at least one of the sites.
Great. Well, I'll take over and get into the community engagement portion of the project. Like Mark mentioned, that the project relied heavily on community engagement and impact and feedback from community residents. Prior to the artists being selected, we had 5 community meetings that were hosted over a few years that we were able to gather those concerns and ideas and themes to take for the project. We also had a couple open house events at the very start of the project when we had a handful of artists that we were selecting. We started with a large pool of artists, narrowed it down to 12, and settled on a group of we settled on 3 artists, so 1 for each viaduct. And those artists were asked to host a series of community events in the neighborhood near their assigned underpass. These events were designed to help the artists further engage with the community, collect input and images and stories to help to refine their initial design that was submitted. These events started in January and ran through early spring and would have gone a little longer if the pandemic didn't interfere. So the artists held a really awesome range of events, from a community paint day, which Priscilla will talk a little bit more about, as well as making mosaic pots, and some other of their ideas, which were to take a nature walk through a nearby urban farm. At the Diamond Underpass, there was community dinners that were family style, an opportunity to connect with residents and hear stories, and a really wonderful dress up photo shoot, which corresponded with the Norris Underpass, and a little poetry workshop. I'll go through some photos of all of those events. So this was the community engagement event that the Norris artists did. So that's Josh Sarantitis and Patrick Doger. The part of the theme of their mural is like divine nobility and royal like bearing and spirituality, which is reflected in their mural design. And they wanted to engage with residents and have this fun photo shoot with these halos and regal attire. And their design has 2 poems featured in it. So there was a small haiku workshop led by Patrick, where those that attended wrote things and also drew pictures depending on their age. So it was really interactive for everyone that attended. We had a large range of ages, as those pictures just showed. For the Diamond Underpass, it was a series of 4 family-style community dinners. We even, because of the timing, it aligned with Mardi Gras, so Kathy had the wonderful idea of bringing some Mardi Gras themed things to our dinner. It was an opportunity for the residents to talk with the artist, Andrea. So she is on the right of the PowerPoint in this photo, and she collected stories. People brought in physical photos or shared things off their phone. It was a really wonderful interactive session. We even had portraits being taken by a photographer originally from Philly. So those portraits will be incorporated in the closing out of the mural project. Next is the Susquehanna site. So this was Priscilla's site, who will talk a little bit more about her engagement, but the first workshop was a paint day where people were helping paint the sunflowers that will be part of the mural. They also had 2 nights of mosaic pot making. So this was an event we had a big range of people, lots of kids and adults who really just enjoyed getting to come home, to take home a pot. They even got seed packets, and this was connecting to their theme of abundance and growth, which is showed in their mural, connecting people to things that are growing right there in their neighborhood and allowing them to bring home a pot and grow something right there in their homes. We'll dive into the sites. These, just to give you a sense of what the sites look like before the murals happened. This is the Norris site, so that's 10th and Norris. And the title of this mural is History in the Present Moment. They're crowns like light beams. So as I mentioned, the artists were really calling attention to divine nobility, spirituality of the local community, and they displayed the portraits in that sort of royal attire with halos. And on the north side wall, they did a royal procession, which you'll see in the photos to come. But one of their ideas that they weren't able to execute for their community engagement event was having a procession where community members were going to be asked to help make costumes and different signs and have a little parade throughout the neighborhood as a part of the dedication for the mural. That looks a little differently just because we're all online, but there were a lot of exciting ideas that were generated for the community engagement component of this project. So this is their final design. This takes input from the community and from both their sort of open house events that happened at the very beginning of the project to the smaller events like the photo shoot. And you can see this piece right here in the middle, the people with the halo is kind of part of that procession that they were looking at for some of their community engagement events. So these are some images of the work in progress. The mural component of this site is complete, and there is a mosaic portion that still will be wrapped up and will include some of the images taken during the photo shoot. And then on to the Diamond and 10th Street underpasses. This is a really large site and a pretty thorough community engagement process with those 4 community dinners. So the artist, Andrea Legge, who is part of a firm, Legge Lewis Legge, was inspired by the themes suggested by conversations with community members, where she heard someone describe the community as diamonds in the rough. And she focused on an 8-step community building process that she learned about through one of the community members at the 8th and Diamond Advisory Council that was heavily part of the community engagement process of this site. So each of her wall has a different theme that's part of that community building process, like family, spirituality, school, and community. So each portion of the wall has a different theme and is sort of shown as a series of vignettes, which is really neat to experience if you have the opportunity to go to the site. These are just the breakdown of the designs for each of the walls. So this one is temple and church. This one is the school themed mural, family and home, community, and then a second wall that's a little bit smaller, but also focused on community. These are some photos of the work in progress. They're still on site probably right now as we speak, working really hard to wrap things up in the next week. And then the last site, Susquehanna, between 10th and 11th. Here's just the before site photos. And this mural is done by Anthony Torcasio and Priscilla Bell, who we get to have on for today. And their design focuses on community, abundance, and growth, and it aims to portray the pivotal strengths that exist within the community. A lot of the botanical images that you see in the mural are specific to the neighborhood. Through their community engagement event, they were able to identify a woman to include in the mural, which you'll see in the next couple slides. So this is the design, the final design before we went on the wall. And some photos of in progress. And this is Priscilla and Anthony and a few of their wonderful assistants that have been working really hard on site every day. Great. Well, we can head into the panel discussion part, and I'll turn my screen off.
So I'm just going to start by asking Priscilla, one of the artists from the Susquehanna intersection, a few questions, and then we'll move on from there. So the very first one, Priscilla, is what was your overall community engagement strategy? And I know Maya touched on some of the things you did, but in your own words, how would you describe your overall community engagement strategy?
Well, you know, I think that what we set out, Anthony and I set out to do, was to really listen to the community, work with the community. You know, myself, I'm born and raised in Philadelphia, and I was born in North Philly, you know, so I felt like attached and a kinship to the area. And I thought it would be really, really important to talk with the residents there and the neighbors there to see what they wanted to see on the wall and how we can continue to engage with them beyond just what's on the wall. So.
Excellent. So kind of in that same vein, how was that essential to your design process? And I know you just touched on it a little bit, but.
Well, it really did help formulate. I mean, we did have an idea of what it would look like, but we felt it was really important to incorporate a member of the community and also an image. There's row houses that are there. And there's actually row houses just around the corner that we had taken the image of, and it's like not even any other part of the day where somebody would come up to us and say, oh, that's Miss so and so's house, or that's my aunt's house, or something like that. So it was really wonderful to actually engage positively with folks in the community, just by painting on the wall and just bringing this mural to life. So we
Yeah, one
wanted.
thing that,
Mhm.
sorry to interrupt you, one thing that struck me in our conversations recently was that the way I kind of pictured this going is there would be a lot of initial community engagement, and that would lead to the design, and that would be that. But you have really had the luxury of interacting with residents on a daily basis that live around the site, and seeing like the direct impact that the mural has had on them. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we had this whole thing planned out pre-COVID. We were going to do the paint days, which we had done. Thankfully, we had squeezed that in. And then also the mosaic planters, with the hopes of working with the Urban Creators Farm that's right around the corner. So closer towards the beginning or the start of the mural, we were going to have an engagement there at the farm with local residents, maybe those who had done planters, maybe even continued the planter idea. We were going to have a North Philly resident that I know who is very familiar with herbs and other kind of plant life, and we were going to walk around the neighborhood or even around the farm to identify like medicinal plants and things that might not be so helpful or poisonous, just to kind of like look at all of the elements around us. Then we were also going to have like a canning workshop. We were going to do a little end of the party, like end of the mural party at the farm. And there was all this stuff that we had planned, but thank goodness we were able to squeeze in the mosaic and the painting. So.
Excellent. So it kind of in that same vein too, can you talk about how your design was refined over time in your engagement with the community? Like maybe you set out to do one thing and you changed it slightly to do something else?
Well, yes, definitely. Yeah, so I think that when we incorporated it, when we first set out to do the design, we had like these houses that were pretty much nondescript North Philly houses.
Yeah.
But actually, in speaking with the residents, then we changed the image so it could actually be actual houses that were in the neighborhood. So I think that was really helpful, and that actually went over very well. And then we also had like a stock photo image of a person, standing with flowers around her in the original image. But we wanted to incorporate somebody within the neighborhood. So there is a person that that we had chosen that was like perfect for that particular image, Miss Dardania. And we decided to put like the corn stalks instead of flowers, because we do have other flowers in the rest of the mural, but the corn stalks, because of the urban farm and a lot of the little farms that are around, Phil Abundance is around the corner. So that idea of also growth and growing food sovereignty is really huge too. Like I mentioned, the canning workshop. So, thinking about incorporating food sovereignty in the mural too, or that idea of. So a lot of people actually, when we were talking and having discussions as we were painting, they were like, wow, look at those, look at the corn. And I remember growing corn as a child, and sunflowers, and, you could see sunflowers throughout the whole neighborhood, and with the sunflower seeds and things. So that's something that was really important. And actually it was just a beautiful incorporation.
You touched on it just a little bit. So that is a really interesting comparison there. You have your mural going up with focusing on on that theme of growth and everything, right? And abundance. And then you have the Phil Abundance site really almost catty corner to where you are. So there is kind of, you know, what I was mentioning back in the project background and everything is that there's this connection, not only between the original housing site, but other critical community improvements happening in the neighborhood. So I love that, you know, the work you're doing is kind of loosely tied to the work that Phil Abundance is doing too at the same time. Now, you talked about a lot of positive interactions and things that have kind of contributed to the development of your mural. But what about some challenges? What were some difficult things that you encountered along the way?
Well, I mean, as far as difficult, I wouldn't say, we didn't have anything that was too hard, except for, I mean, there's a lot of noise.
Okay.
There's a lot with the trains going by
Yeah.
and things of that nature, but that's like something that can't be helped, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, for overall, it was a pretty positive experience. You know, I really would like to see like an ongoing dialogue and connection with the mural. I mean, I think that there was some concerns from the residents, like they didn't want, you know, graffiti to go back on the walls, or they were concerned about, you know, possibly, you know, the mural being vandalized or things of that nature, or like not necessarily having that continuation of interaction, you know. So that was a concern that I kept on hearing, and from several folks throughout the duration of the summer. And I think that that's really important to kind of like continue this dialogue of, you know, safety and incorporating and just making sure that things are, you know, folks are in the neighborhood are included in these discussions. And that was something that really struck out to me. But in terms of like any setbacks, it's, I mean, it would be like physical things like rain, water, things you can't help.
Sure. Sure. So I really like that idea of kind of a post-installation community event too. During this time, we're not going to be able to do some sort of like, traditionally we'll do like a groundbreaking type ceremony for a housing development. You know, we're not going to be able to have this giant celebration there, unfortunately, but it would be good to keep residents informed, address any concerns they have now that the mural is actually up. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier in terms of the safety component is we've actually installed security cameras around each intersection as well. And I went out looking for them and I could barely find them. So it's probably good that they're aware of that, and that, you know, that can be a deterrent too, and let them know that this is like an ongoing process, right? So that was very helpful feedback. I appreciate all that.
Mark,
I'm
we have
gonna,
a question.
okay.
It says, thanks for sharing this amazing project. Can you talk a little about the particular section to do why this particular section to do this work, given all the similar intersections across the city? And is there something in thinking about replicating this citywide?
So that's an excellent question. The motivation here goes back to the connection between the target housing site where Norris Homes once stood, and where the new housing is going in relation to the Viaduct intersection. Plus, and then I was talking a little bit about the kind of the barriers that the Viaduct created for those residents, right, on either side. That's not to say that people north of the site or south of the site might be experiencing the same thing, but really this was driven by the grant, was within the boundaries of the grant area and adjacent to the target housing site. Plus, these are heavily traveled intersections, especially Norris Street. That is one of the entrances to the Temple Regional Rail stop is there, and that is the fourth most trafficked regional stop in the entire system. When class is in session, there's a sea of people coming out of that site. So a combination of being important in terms of the target housing site within the grant boundary areas and high traffic areas is really what drew us to those three locations.
And as a follow-up question, says the work is so layered and refined, but engagement costs money and political community capital. How could a smaller organization learn about your work if they're trying to do a similar place in public beautification and safety projects?
The what you're hearing today is incredibly extensive community engagement, at least in my mind. There were a lot of events that went into this, and this was a one thing I didn't touch on earlier is there's a timeline in this grant. It's a 5-year grant, and it actually ends on in 2 weeks, on September 14th. So that allowed us year 5 to have a excellent idea about who the stakeholders are in this community, which residents are really engaged, who we should tap into. So I guess what I would say, if you don't have that kind of luxury, it's really getting to know the neighborhood and the residents in the neighborhood and being able to quickly organize them to make sure that you're getting the feedback you need, the representative feedback you need.
Okay. We can move on.
So next I have some questions for Tiffany.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
So you introduced yourself at the beginning of the presentation. Do you want to remind folks where you kind of your involvement in this project and like how you? I guess the first question I have for you is how did we reach you? How did you know about
Okay.
the project?
I actually am a new resident in Norris Phase 2 housing. I was selected to come back to come and live there because a few other residents chose not to come back to the area. Initially, I was very hesitant because of the area, and I have 4 children, 4 girls at that. So the first year, I relied heavily on PHA and the other organizations that were reaching out to me, knowing that I was a new resident. The Philadelphia Mural Arts and PHA were dropping flyers off at the house just to get engagement. And so, like I said, with me and my daughters, we started coming out to the open house meetings, and I became very engaged as to find out that it was that the area was being influenced by a lot of people, and it wasn't just pitting residents in the neighborhood with nothing to do or no type of beautification in the neighborhood. Because like I said, I did move into a brand new house, but trying to take the kids to the park, I was hesitant because the park didn't get taken care of, the trash in the community. So being a part of this process, it really helped me and my family to feel comfortable in the neighborhood and to also know how we can impact it and how we can, motivate our neighbors to be a part of something and create a more sense of community since we were new. So I actually relied on all the open houses and the meetings to meet residents that I didn't see that often. A lot of the senior residents I'd never see, but being at these meetings, I seen so many people come to connect where they are in the neighborhood and started to have conversations with more people.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that has to do with in knowing you a little bit. You have like more of an outgoing personality, and you're interested in kind of getting together with people and in different settings and stuff. And I think that takes a lot of guts on your behalf. It's harder to reach, in my experience, the newer residents to a community because maybe they're not as comfortable or whatever. So I want to, applaud you for showing up at those events. And
right.
It was the question earlier asked about community engagement can be a time consuming and somewhat expensive process. You're on the east side of the viaduct, which is also where 8th and Diamond Rec Center is too. So I should mention that we combined some of the community engagement, some of the outreach, so residents could give us their feedback both on the rec center and on the viaduct project at the same time. So I think, did you find that was helpful as well? Maybe like 2 meetings in a row rather than having to come out multiple nights?
Well, yes, it was helpful for me. being able to know about everything in the community, what was going on with the viaducts and as far as the playground. I also worked, I also made a relationship with Ms. Donna Richardson that runs the after school program. The first year that my kids were there, and she was very a very good person to go to find out what was going on, and she kept me involved with, you know, just notifying me and everything.
So those are the positive aspects of it, and we're happy to hear those. What were some challenges? Were the you know, I certainly let you answer, but were the meeting times problematic? Was it good that they were in evenings? Would you have preferred weekends? Or we tried to take a balanced approach, and we did some day events on the weekends. We did meetings at night. But what was your experience, and is there anything that maybe we could have done differently to reach more residents?
The evening meetings were great for my family. The weekend meetings were kind of tough for me, because I try to use my weekends when I'm not working to bond with my kids and do things on our own. So a lot of the Saturday morning workshops y'all had, we didn't get to attend because I had already planned things for me and my family to do. But the afternoon meetings were great. Even the evening meetings were great because you offered like community dinners, which was a great benefit for me to not have to go home and cook for 4 kids if we're going to be at a meeting for almost 2 hours. And it was engaging. A lot of everything was very engaging. It wasn't just sitting, listening to people talk. My daughter's ages right now are 15, 14, 13, and 6. And I will love to say even my youngest daughter, she was very engaged with finding out about the art and what she was going to be able to participate in. My older daughters were very interested in just learning and talking with the artists to find out like the different methods and materials they use. So I want to say the evening appointments were great.
Okay.
I do feel like some of the other residents were more probably not for the evening because they already had things planned for their family. But I mean, every family's different. And I feel like we had a great turnout with most of the meetings that I attended. So, you know, a lot of people that were same faces, and then there were new faces here and there. So I thought that was really good.
Okay.
A quick
Thank you.
question. Hey, Tiffany, kudos for your participation in the project. Did you find that being involved in the engagement helped you and your children feel better about being in the neighborhood and more connected to folks?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I spoke with my mother a lot, who lives in West Oak Lane. I'm from West Oak Lane, there's a lot of community engagement. There's a lot of awareness with neighbors speaking with each other. So that was my hesitancy coming to North Philadelphia. But after the meetings that you guys arranged and basically the engagement, it was very easy for me to put faces to neighbors and blocks and where everyone was at. Even reaching the senior citizens, because I'm actually on the block where the senior citizen living facility is at the end. So I actually get to see the people that I was in meetings with and have those small talks and things like that. I feel very connected and very secure now. And this is my 2nd year in the neighborhood.
Great. Thank you. Mark?
So, Tiffany, did you feel, all that being said, with an opportunity to weigh in at these meetings, did you feel that your input was valuable? Did you feel like you were being heard?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely feel like my input was valued. I definitely feel as if, even if I had questions of just not understanding the process, everyone made me feel very comfortable with asking those questions, even, you know, showing me how the process would work, the timelines. It was very informative.
And then this last one is kind of a tough question, but now that some of the murals are up, how does it feel to walk under, you know, to pass them every day or to have them in your community? Do you find that it's like, it just makes your walk more enjoyable, something like that? Or does it have more of an impact, or do you not notice them?
Yeah, I really feel it has a great impact. For me personally, it just feels like I was a part of the process. I feel a sense of ownership, even if I wasn't the artist putting the paint on the wall. I do feel a sense of ownership because I was throughout the process. It was very engaging. I have brought my kids around, and my older teenagers take walks, and I feel more secure now. Safety was definitely a big part of why I would avoid the viaducts at all times.
Mm-hmm.
But because everything's so bright and lit, you actually see residents going and using the viaducts to take time to look at the wall and examine versus, just trying to hurry with the families underneath to get from out of that space.
Awesome. Awesome. That is good to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Kathy, or anything else you want to share, Tiffany?
No,
Okay.
like I said, I definitely was very eager to be a part of this process throughout the beginning and the end, and I'm very happy with what I've seen on the wall, and then the engagement through the artists, the community.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
So now I have some questions for Maya and Kathy, who are really tasked with the implementation side of this project. What's your perspective? The first one's fairly broad, but what went well and what could have gone better?
Well, I wish this pandemic hadn't hit. We had so many things planned for this spring, so much more engagement that we were going to do. Josh and Patrick were going to do just like meditations at their wall. They were, like Maya already explained, they were going to make the costumes. We were going to have a huge procession. We had a lot of plans that now we are so unfortunately can't do, but we have been able to pivot and find other ways what our dedication is going to look like. Everything that we're doing now is going to be virtual. We're channeling the funds that we were going to use for the event into creating film documentation and kind of a filmed dedication, so to speak, with interviews from the artists. So, it's not what we planned, but it's nice that we'll have something that can actually have a broader, we can send it out to a lot of different avenues and a lot more people can see what we've done. So, it's kind of bittersweet in that regard. But I wanted to also mention that getting to the point of the themes and everything for the viaduct intersections was a process that started long before we actually started the project. Yeah. I had, with Mark and SEPTA, been in meetings for 2 years, right, Mark? Before I got the call, and I was like, "Oh, are you serious? We actually are going to move forward." Because so many times you go through those processes, and then it's like, "Okay, that was nice. We came up with a great plan. We don't have any money for it, but we got a great plan." Right? So this was a really exciting to be able to move forward and be able to do these intersections. And I think that the artists that we selected are pretty extraordinary, and so I was really happy with that as well. So.
That's a good point too, is that I feel like a lot of the artists that were ultimately selected from for this project probably resonated well with the community and has enabled like continued conversations, and they've just been easy to work with, right? Like I feel that way. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but if there have been issues that have come up, all of them have been approachable, open to refining their designs and stuff too, which is something that we wanted to see. Now, I will, since you're here, I got to ask you, you've been involved in tons of projects. How does this one set itself apart? Is it like all the others, or what are the key differences?
For me, I think the key difference was just being able to have the resources and flexibility to do, everything that you envision. There's a lot of times where a project will be successful enough that we will find additional money and we keep going, and so then you come up and you're able to do everything you want to do. But it's just like in one of the questions from Pamela was about resources. It is difficult. I work with Mural Arts Institute and travel to other cities, and they
You're muted, Kathy. Yep.
I'm sorry, I touched it
It's
by
okay.
mistake.
It's
So,
okay.
yeah, so I think that, being able to do that. And I also was talking earlier today in another meeting about how great it was to have the team that we have to work with and how everybody brought something different to the table. And so I think that was really great. I think, Maya has done an incredible job
Mhm.
at keeping us on task and keeping everything organized. Todd bringing his artistic expertise to the table to be able to talk to the artists has been great. And then you with all the city end and the contractual, and Portia with the lighting, so it's like really a great, and the fact that we communicate every week, and we know what's going on. Facet. I think that's really been beneficial. And Maya's even been keeping up with art, with meetings like that with the artists as well. So I think the communication has been really good.
Excellent. Thank you.
There's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it says not really a question. Seems like the opposite of the broken windows theory. The beautiful walls theory shows people out there caring. The lighting is key for safety too. Also, like making sure dinner is there at evening meetings. Yeah, the dinners were great. They did. It helped bring people out, but it was also nice to just have that fellowship to sit around the table and share a meal. So we tried to, and particularly most of our meetings were at the dinner hour. So it just seemed inappropriate to ask people to come and sit from 6 to 8 or, 5:30 to 7:30 or something
Right.
like that and not give them something substantial to eat. So, yeah, so that was great as well.
So earlier in response to one of the questions, I mentioned that having a key group of stakeholders in the community, this was a little unique in the sense that the project spanned 3 different sites. So what we really did was identified stakeholder groups for each intersection. That helps to get people in the room, and really that's your goal first and foremost is to get as many people to show up as possible. But can you also tell us some challenges that we've run into here with this project and with other projects with kind of leaning on one organization, maybe too much at times?
I would say that we did have a very strong, very vocal group for Diamond Street. And it wasn't a challenge, it was a blessing in so many ways because we had a community leader who could help shepherd us through, who needed to be at the table and that type of thing. But it was also a very, I would say that there are some people who kind of took over in a lot of ways. And so that was a challenge just to make sure that everybody's voice was heard, and particularly at those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
With another intersection, there was a community person who just had some concerns with the mural in its entirety. I think that one thing that we talked about in the beginning of this project, which we actually didn't do, was keeping people in the community out of the mural because it does bring challenges. Everybody is wondering how come her and not me, how come they don't even live here, they live across the street and so they're too far away, so it got into a lot of conversations like that, which were a little difficult, and I'm still navigating, that situation to make everybody feel included, so that, I think that's why we thought when we did the photography that would be also a nice way to give people something, like with Norwich Street, with the costumes, we printed all those photographs while the people were there and gave them framed photographs of themselves. So that was really nice. They had a takeaway immediately. Same thing with the flower pots and everything at Susquehanna. Immediate takeaway and participation was, clear and evident. We were also planning to have an exhibition at Urban Creators, which we are unfortunately unable to do. We were hoping to have an exhibition of the photographs because the photographs at Diamond Street were taken by Sean Theodore, who's a pretty renowned photographer, nationally. And we wanted to be able to have maybe an exhibition at Tyler or somewhere on Temple's campus, but right now we can't do that either. So we're trying to figure out how to use those photographs virtually in some type of virtual type exhibition, and maybe a panel discussion with Sean and, and Andrea, the other artists. And so we're figuring all that out. That's part of the pivoting that we've had to do of the result of the COVID.
Thank you. And go Go ahead, Maya.
Oh, I'd also just like to add that we mentioned that APM was a partner in the project, but I don't think we've really gone into detail about how much they were able to support us in our like strategic community outreach. We initially had them as a partner. They helped us with some of the outreach for our initial sort of open house days when we were working with a larger group pool of artists, and we sort of then realized that like it was really imperative to have APM on board more as we were going to be doing more outreach and having a series of events. So we worked with them and got a contract to work with them to be able to have them help us flyer the neighborhoods for each of the community events that the artists were putting on. We also utilized their like weekly newsletters for any events, and that sort of helped us get a broader reach and was really important. And while we definitely, like Kathy said, had the challenge of having like one specific stakeholder group and not being able to have people outside of that sort of larger stakeholder group, it was a good technique or strategy that we used, and something that maybe could be refined so we can figure out how to get like a larger pool of people, not just from one group.
Yeah, APM was really, really helpful in just talking through the strategy of how to connect in the neighborhood, who to connect to, and then being able to work with their connectors to get the word out was invaluable.
They also have a policy, correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, of requiring that anyone who works on a project is paid a living wage. So it was at $15 an hour for
the connectors, which is great.
And then Maya, you touched on it a bit. Can you? We haven't gone into too much detail about the different types of events. One of which you just mentioned was the open house. That I thought was pretty innovative in the sense that people could come and travel to each intersection and talk to the artist. So it goes back to like the community feeling comfortable with the artist. And then also I thought that the gallery night that we did, where the artists came and stood by their works and residents could go around the room and talk to the artist there, I thought that was pretty cool too. I guess I just talked around it, but if Kathy or Maya wants to elaborate.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Maya.
I can elaborate a little on that. So like I said, we had a very large pool of artists that we narrowed down to 12 and then 3. And for the 12 artists that were sort of the finalist list, their designs were printed up on these big poster boards, and community residents were kind of invited to walk around, review each design, talk with the artist, hear a little bit about where their ideas came from, a lot of which came from those open houses that we had 2 summers ago. There were feedback forms for people to write down their reaction about what they liked, what they didn't like, that was shared with the artists after the event, as well as those that were involved in the design selection process. But there was also food at that event, and it was like a pretty nice to have sort of a time range where people could drop in. I think it allowed for more flexibility for people that maybe got off work a little bit later or wanted to get home to make dinner. Having a larger time range, we really saw a variety of people come through to provide input.
Thank you. And then anything else you guys want to share? If not, I'll ask Beth if there's any questions from the audience.
That's it.
Well, I unfortunately, this is Beth, sorry, I can't post in the Q&A because I'm a host, but I'll pose a question if I can. One last question. So envisioning a post-COVID world where we actually can be together again, people can be together again. Did any ideas emerge? I mean, Kathy, I know you talked about a couple things that you weren't able to do around using the space, but other ways of using the space in the future as more than just thoroughfares, like closing the street and doing festivals or community events is one part of the question. And the second part of the question is, from all this kind of gathering of people coming together and thinking about their community and being engaged, did other ideas come up of, you know, what else we should do next? You know, did anything emerge that you think would be a good next step or a good continuation of the process?
I would love to be able, if and when, you know, we were able to come back again, and if there was, you know, a year from now, you know, we could have a first anniversary or something like that. Unfortunately, the grant ends in 2 weeks. So being able to fund something like that is something that Mural Arts would have to think about and see if we can do. So right now, we are moving, like Mark alluded to earlier, to doing Burke Street. And, you know, we don't know what the climate will be like when that one is done. So maybe there'll be a way to do some type of outdoor celebration for all of them, because our plan was we were talking about like even having a procession, like to start, if we started at Susquehanna, then went to Diamond, then went to NARS and finished at Burke's, and that was Burke's dedication, then that's a possibility. So right now, we just have to wait and see. So we would love to be able to do something like that.
I think also there was, when we were looking at different options for a revised dedication, we had thought about putting together like a walking route that would allow people to visit the 3 sites. And that's something, you know, once Burke's is finished, putting together like a self-guided walking tour that takes people to the 4 sites, maybe with a little description. And that's something that people could do at their own leisure in appropriate space, from people, you know, spend your Saturday afternoon going to check out 3 murals, and you're provided a little map with some background about the murals.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Any other questions, Kathy, that you're seeing on your end?
No.
Okay. Anything else that any of the other panelists want to share, Tiffany or Priscilla?
No, not right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share that this has been a wonderful opportunity. I feel that I've met a lot of wonderful people throughout the summer. And when I was looking at the photos, it just kind of made me laugh and giggle a little bit, because we just had a really great time despite COVID and all the other restrictions, the weather. It was a really great time this summer.
Awesome.
All right, Beth, if you want to close us out, I want to thank everybody. I think this was a great discussion. It was nice to hear everybody's points of view, and Mark, great questions, keeping us going. So, thanks a lot.
Well, thanks everyone. And thanks to PADC for giving us the opportunity to present today.